What's up, babes? Welcome back to the Miko Suit Supplies YouTube channel. So if you've been following me on Facebook and on Instagram, you know that I've been moving around a ton. Today, I'm finally going to bring you a video that's long overdue. It's the so long for using the advanced Miko molded bra cup pattern. And if you remember from last year, this advanced pattern features no binding on the edges, and it also features a pocket, so if you or your competitor need extra stuffing, you'll be able to use that pocket. So let's get to sewing. Let's go over your supplies. You'll need alligator clips or quilter clips, molded bra cups. I highly recommend using a walking foot. You will need a bunch of pins, the advanced Miko molded bra cup pattern, and stretch needles. For the most part, I'm going to be using the 9014 stretch needle. It's the larger needle. Before we get started, let's talk about cutting out your pattern in your fabric and lining. So go to page 6 of your pattern instructions. First, we need to talk about the notches. So where I want you to notch your fabric is right here and on the other side, but not all the way through, down here, and then do the same thing for the front cup. Since we're using 1/4 inch seam allowances, make sure your notches are about 1/8 of an inch. We're going to start with the princess seam, so take note of the notches that you made on the stem along the princess seam side, and with right sides together, match those notches on the princess seam, and we're just going to put a pin at the notch. Then we're going to pin the entire princess seam together. So what I like to do is match the curvature of the front cup to the curvature of the side cup as I pin through. So here we go. Here is the front cup and the side cup pinned together at the princess seam. And note that there is a wrinkle on the front cup, and that's fine. Next, we are going to close the dart on your back pocket pattern piece. So match the bottoms of your dart legs together, and we're just going to put a few pins through the dart to keep that dart closed. All right, so now that your dart's closed, we're going to move on to sewing down your princess seam. So let's sew the princess seam together, and I am using a 3mm long regular straight stitch. Make sure to backstitch a couple to anchor down your stitches. And we're just going to feed your pieces through the machine, trying your best to follow the curvature of the side cup. And as you go through the turn of your apex, just go as slowly as you need to make sure that you are actually following that curvature. So here we go. This is your princess seam sewn together. Next, we're going to sew our dart closed, but let's pause for a second, and I want to talk about what I have pinned to the bottom of my dart. So at the bottom of my dart, I've pinned a dissolvable stabilizer. And this is because the lining pieces that I use for my pockets are so thin, the lining fabric I mean that I use for my pockets are so thin that the needle ends up pushing the fabric into the needle hole and then completely tangles up my bobbin area. So I use the stabilizer to prevent that from happening. Now if you don't have dissolvable stabilizer on hand, you can use a piece of tissue paper, or you could even use computer paper if that's all you have, but you'll have to pick that paper off of your stitches after you sew it together. So let's get back to sewing. This dart is a curved dart, so make sure that you follow the curvature as you sew it through. And I'm just using a straight stitch, 3 millimeters long. And once you get to the dart end, sew a couple of straight stitches past the dart. Don't backstitch on your dart's peak, and what we're going to end up doing to hold the stitches together is just tie it into a knot. Tie your thread tails into a knot. So I'm going to dip this in water, but if you used paper, just make sure you pick all the pieces of paper out of your dart. Before we move on to putting all of our pieces together, I want you to note that I finished the half circle opening of my pocket piece with a run of serger stitches, but that's completely optional and up to you if you want to finish your half circle or leave it raw. It should be fine either way. So the first part of the assembly is we are going to attach our pocket piece to the molded bra cup. Now the edges of your pocket piece, meaning the cleavage side edge and the arm side edge, will match up exactly to the edges of your molded bra cup. So we're just going to make sure that we align the edges of both the molded bra cup and your pocket piece and clip all the way around. This is where I like to use alligator clips, but you can also use quilter clips if you have those on hand. Now we're going to sew the pocket piece to the molded bra cup. At this step, I like to make sure that my stitches land about 1/8 of an inch away from the edge of the cup. And to do this, I just shift my needle all the way to the right. But if your machine doesn't have that capability, that's okay. Just make sure that your stitches land between 1/8 of an inch and 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of the cup. I'm just using my standard straight stitch, that's 3 millimeters long, and I'm going to stitch around the cup starting first with the arm side or the whole side of the pocket piece. Then I'm going to move on to the cleavage side of the pocket piece. At this step, I still use my walking foot because I want to make sure that the lining piece doesn't shift and doesn't deviate from the alignment it has with the edge of the molded bra cup. To finish off your pocket piece and your molded bra cup assembly, we're going to run straight stitches down the bottom edge of your molded bra cup. Now you're going to note that the bottom edge of your pocket piece isn't always going to match the bottom edge of your molded bra cup, and that's totally fine. The only thing that I want you to keep in alignment is making sure that your dart is in the center of the bottom edge of your molded bra cup. And as you stitch your pocket to your molded bra cup, I don't want you to pull on the pocket piece. It should have some give and it should just lay nicely inside of your molded bra cup. Now remember, this is a pocket piece that should be able to hold extra stuffing if it needs to, so you don't want it to be tight. Here is your pocket attached to the molded bra cup. We're just going to trim off the excess lining along the bottom. Now let's move on to the main event. But before we get into sewing, I want to pause for a moment to talk about the notches that we made on the stem along the arm side of the cup and along the cleavage side of the cup for your pattern pieces. Along the arm side of the cup, you'll see that you have an upper and a lower notch. With the right side of the fabric facing the inside of the cup, align that upper notch with the very top edge of the cup. So here's the view from the back side. The upper notch is aligned with the very top edge of the cup. Then we are going to clip the fabric to the cup, making sure that the edge of the fabric is also aligned with the edge of the cup. So again, take note of the alignment. Now it's time to attach the fabric to the cup. At this step, it's very important that you start your stitches on the lower notch. So make sure that your needle is hovering over that lower notch. When you start stitching, make sure to also backstitch to anchor your stitches. And again, I'm using my standard 3mm long straight stitch and stitching a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the cup, making sure that the fabric and the cup maintain alignment along the edge. Moving on to the other side of the cup, we're going to repeat all of that. So align the upper notch of your fabric piece with the very top edge of the cup and clip along the side of the cup. Again, sew a 1/4 inch away from the edge of the cup, making sure that the edge of the fabric stays aligned with the edge of the cup. Here you can see that I'm sewing from the bottom of the cup toward the stem. If you do this, it's very important that you make sure your stitches end at the lower notch, and then backstitch to anchor your stitches. At this point, you'll see that the front cut pattern piece and the side cut pattern piece form sort of a union at the stem, folding along the princess seam. So we want to close up that stem. To do that, straight stitch it closed using a 1/8 inch seam allowance. And it's very important here to note that your stitches need to end at the upper notch. So again, your stitches need to end at the upper notch. And as always, make sure to backstitch to anchor your stitches. We are almost done, but before turning the entire assembly inside out, trim down the seam allowance of the princess seam on the stem to about 1/8 of an inch. So trim only from the top of the stem to the upper notch on the princess seam side of the stem. Then poke a safety pin through on one side of the stem and begin turning the entire assembly inside out by feeding the safety pin through the stem all the way to the bottom opening of the cup. Opening up the princess seam allowance will make it easier to turn inside out. After turning inside out, make sure that your princess seam allowance is spread open and laying flat against the cup. I sometimes do this by just using my fingers, but you can also use a popsicle stick or anything that would allow the seam allowance to get open. Then align the seam with the center of the bottom edge of the cup and clip it. And at this point, straight stitch the bottom edge closed. Okay, you are so close to the finish line, but there are still a couple of finishing details left. The stems should now be complete, and you can string any connector that you'd like through those stems and then just run a straight stitch through the top of the cup. About 3 passes of straight stitches will secure your connector to your cup. The second finishing detail is to attach the bottom binding or channel. I usually attach channels along the bottom edge, so make sure to watch this step in the beginner molded bra cup tutorial that I released a couple of years ago. The timestamp for this step is linked in the description below, as well as on the upper right corner of this screen. I hope you found that video helpful. If you did, make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe to the Miko Suit Supplies YouTube channel. If you didn't, if you were confused at any step of the way, make sure to comment below and I will do my best to answer your questions.